It is a great honor and pleasure to receive the Prime Minister and Éric MAUMY, and I'll be brief. Then I'll give the floor to Éric MAUMY, and then I'll give the floor to the Prime Minister. France is a country full of talents and promises. We're a great country. We're a great country. You have to be convinced about a great country. We're a great country. At the same time, France goes through a complicated period. You know, drop in productivity, not specific to France, it concerns the whole of Europe versus the US. If I take just France, productivity grew by only 0.8% per year since 1995 versus 1.7 in the US, which deprives us from the growth that would make it possible to finance our ambitions. But, you know, decline is European. We caught up with the US in up to 85, but our productivity is now declining, and in Europe and French. Our public debt almost doubled since 2000. So it went from 60% to 116% of the GDP, and we have the second highest deficit in the Eurozone in 2025. So those are fragile situations, and these take place at a time when the country has to absorb external shocks of large scope. Geopolitical fragmentation, value chain are really reconstituted. Before they were based on minimization of costs. You know, each country would produce the cheapest part. Now it's resilience that becomes the main criterion for the reconstitution of value chain. You know, we got high-tech Chinese product. You know, they got buyers in the entry in the market. You know, they come to the European market and it's the French market. Climate crisis we experienced last week. Increased loss of revenues in young population, an AI revolution, and especially of generative AI, which reshuffles the cards on the labor market and raises the issue of the acquisition of economic power and wealth. And I see two major challenges. The first one is to stop the populist danger. In 1 year time, the president could be a populist, and that it would compromise the raising of Europe. And this would be a disaster not for us only, but for Europe and all countries of the world who share our values for democracy, liberty, you know, rule of law. It would be a disaster. So, first challenge is to avoid the populist risk. Now, how can we do that? By restoring the Republican promises. We have to have the Republic back, and especially access to all to healthcare and education. The mean level of mathematics in CM2 children dropped between 87 and 20. Only 1% of students can reach the level of the 10 best in 87 in mathematics. We got to correct that. We had a very good education system. Anybody from anywhere, you know, if we tried, you know, merit and effort, you would go anywhere. You can't do that anymore. In my youth, you know, we went to public school and we went to private school either for confessional reasons or if we were stupid. And now, even public, you know, even teachers from the public education goes to private, put their kids in private schools. Then there is health care. In some regions, there is a feeling of health care in lack of security, and the question of access to care is a source of fear. We know certain everywhere to be taken care of as it should be. First concern is include everybody. People you don't include will go to the populists. So if we decide to the progress and growth, it has to be inclusive. What we want to, those who want to live on the side of the road will go to the populist, and the cost will be huge. The English know it. The cost of Brexit for 10 years is it's huge. So, second challenge is to restore European sovereignty, especially by raising the issue of AI. AI could be a major danger, but it is an amazing opportunity for growth because AI will make it possible to produce more easily goods and services and to produce more easily new ideas, and therefore but this strength is like a mad horse. Either you hit the wall or it takes you where you want if you have the good institution, the good policies. So what you have to do is to have the good institution to draw the best, to optimize this for optimum and durable growth. We want to go from growth from catching up in the 30 Glorieuses to growth through high-tech rupture innovation. But as you know, Europe is blocking the incremental mid-tech and rupture high-tech innovation is done in the US and in China. It has to be done in Europe. We have the mathematicians, the talents, the researchers, the cheap energy. So let's do innovation. Rupture innovation. Innovation based on French research should not be done in France itself. As McArne says, when you're absent from the table, you end up being on the menu. So, and we don't want to be eaten up, we don't want to be on the menu. So McArne turned first and foremost to France. Everybody is looking at France because they know McArne, they need a Europe that carries the value of democracy, liberty, social model, environmental concerns. He needs this Europe to take over. So, and he knows that France is leading this. Without France, there can be no European resurgence. And once we will have implemented it, once we will have done it, well, countries like Canada, Southern Korea, Singapore, and other countries are ready to follow us. You know, we are in a Gaulian time where we have to have a return of republic, and France, which has values that no others have, and we should be leader in the process. So what should we do? We want a long-term vision. Until now, we hear candidates, but they're not attractive. People listen and they don't want. So today, we want to have hope. We want to have excitement. There are a lot of young people here, so they're ready to get mobilized. To rebuild. So they expect talks of hope. There are worries, also amazing challenges. So what can the entrepreneur, Éric MAUMY, what can you say? And you, Prime Minister of France, what can you say to us? What are the words of hope that we expect now, in a desperate manner? Éric first and Mr. Prime Minister. I talk as a businessman. I don't know if I have to convey this passion, but it's remarkable. But anyway, we will never have enough. Too much is too much. Well, this movement was created because there were too stigma of businesses, too many cliches, and so we want to fuel reflections in a very positive way with the perspective that Philippe AGHION has reminded us. You said it. We have a challenge which is amazing, which is the challenge of generative AI. France, Europe first and foremost, have to win a battle. And I think it's not lost. It's the battle of fundamental models. I think the US have won this battle. Well, they had clearly, they're leading with the foundation like OpenAI, Anthropic, or, hyperscale cloud, so, advanced semiconductors, the private investment, it's huge to transform our country. Now, the question we can ask ourselves is, can we have a European Google? I don't know. It's you, Mr. Prime Minister, or your European colleagues to create the condition for success. There is one thing that I'm absolutely convinced about as a manager, is that Europe and European businesses can win the battle of the deployment of generative AI. How? First, by preventing a threshold, which is, or to snag what will be the jobs destroyed by AI, and to answer how are we going to create possible value thanks to AI by integrating, of course, the key question of jobs. AI, as you said, Philippe early on, could be the greatest economic opportunity for Europe. But it might not be we might not be the Silicon Valley, but we could be the continent that will best apply AI to a real economy. I was in the US, I was struck by two things. I did an AI track, and I was amazed by the speed at which the AI models are being deployed in the US. They don't have just fundamental models. Companies took that, and I'm amazed also by one thing, which makes me optimistic when it comes to job, is that the ability that we have with generative AI to increase in the artificial meaning of the word, the human intelligence, and that of everybody. What is at stake for businesses, we have to be responsible, is that the millions of employees we have, thanks to AI, will become more productive, more creative. They will become competitive. And this is the role of companies to overcome this challenge. First, not waiting for the market to ask us to invest, but mainly by working on a key point, which is that of training. Our huge challenge is not to say jobs will be destroyed. It is clearly to work on the transformation of business or jobs, the employability of business. In my company, we started that 3 years ago, and I want to remove a fantasy, the one according to which we here just to replace men by machines. This is not what is at stake. For us, it is this transformation of jobs, and it calls for us, Mr. Minister, a key responsibility. We have a social contract that we will reinvent, and it was invented at the time by Antoine Ribou within the company, where we are not going to just have, the best companies, but also which are companies which are best to learn. To overcome this challenge, I'm saying it, we are already moving. And to succeed, we need to have an ecosystem that allows us to do it. What I want to say here is that when we talk about productivity issues, you take 0.8% productivity. Well, with AI, we can make sure that millions of SMEs and will have productivity gains that will be in tens of percents. And the other opportunities we have, we have global champions in luxury, in space, in air and space, insurance, where I am. We have the possibility to have the world champion, and hence, thanks to AI. This is what we're trying to do in our company. This responsibility is ours, we entrepreneurs, and we need, next to this, we need to have a state that will be a facilitator. We got a state in the 20th century which has demonstrated that it is a protective state. Some would say too protective. The topic today, we need a state that is a facilitator. We saw what happened in Singapore. We see the state being mobilized, not just so that startup be created, that for the real industry in the administration, we should deploy AI. What does it mean? Well, to get there, if we want you to create, the Prime Minister, the conditions for this deployment, successful deployment, first, we need to simplify. I'm always amazed by the obsession we have to regulate AI. We have to do it. We will do it, rather than paying attention to the way we will create a AI model. Second thing, we have to trust entrepreneurs. We met Mr. Prime Minister at a difficult time for businesses, and I have to say that you were very attentive to our expectations. We have to go further than that. Trust is essential. We have to give a framework for social dialogue. Social dialogue will take place in the company. It is the case in my company. But you have a responsibility at the level of the state to create a framework by inspiring yourself from what Scandinavian countries do, flexi-security, where we are not obsessed by protection of jobs as they are, you're obsessed by the protection of people. And last point, we need funds, we need money. The transformations we're experiencing are such that it's not by 100 millions that will change companies that will create champions. It is with tens and thousands of hundreds of billions. To finance AI cannot be just a punishing system for the existing capital, but to mobilize savings toward productive capital of tomorrow. There are leads on the reorientation of, the innovation. We got 6,000 billion savings in France. They will, there is a sovereign fund to be created so that it could be risk mitigation for those who invest. And there's a lot of private money ready to be invested around that. We got also a stake of mobilizing public command. In the US there are models like NASA, but in all domains of activity. And then we got a topic which is to really unleash entrepreneurial capital. We want that those who create value should be able to reinvest it. And Mr. Prime Minister, this is where we met and you were a facilitator. Last point, Philippe, because I have to be very careful about the fact that everybody is here to hear you and the Prime Minister. One last word on the sharing of value. You said something which is very strong. The risk, I'm back from the US, the winner will tax it all. And therefore the issue of the sharing of value will be essential. And again, Mr. Prime Minister, it is for you to create the conditions so that within companies we could more easily associate employees. I did that in my company with a private equity fund called KKR, which is part of the players which push companies like mine to share values with their employees. Mr. Prime Minister, so you've accepted to come to X, and we're very, very happy. So, where's daily life is taking you? So, we want to hear you. So, on the medium and long term, so how can we mobilize our savings? How can we mobilize the talents we have? How can we take advantage of the fact that we got energy? So how can we get all the assets to get up, save our country and Europe, getting all our citizens in dialogue, so that everybody should feel on board in a great adventure, which is to enter the 21st century and Europe. Thank you. I've accepted your invitation last year to talk almost only about the military geopolitics. And I'm used to not to do too much media. The journalists complain about and globally I keep my words, my speech, because but because with Éric, MAUMY in difficult times during the political crisis and almost budgetary crisis last fall, and with our Nobel Prize, we thought that it would be good to talk to give a bit of perspective. So, and as it is complicated to say no to Philippe AGHION, well, or you'll be harassed for weeks. So I said I'm ready to do it, but with a will to say what I think. So I'm taking my risk, even more so that on Monday the government will face a certain motion of censure. So I have to be free, but as usual, very measured. I want to add crisis to the crisis. Anyway, I think we're facing a time when it's all very well to ask ourselves to think. And I've been in charge of local authorities, or defense, so I'm the Prime Minister. But anyway, I'd like to share with you my feedback and the two or three things that worry me clearly, and especially to answer the question on progress, and the two or three things that reassure me, and see how we can project ourselves. First thing that worries me among our elites, and even though in the political class, is total aversion for a long time. So what we've experienced in the last spring is exactly representative of this. A virus comes, antivirus, we only talk about antivirus for 1 week. Nothing else exists. We got a shock on purchasing power, inflation associated with oil. We only talk about fuel. We got a disaster, you know what I'm talking about, and the heat wave. We only talk about that. So unfortunately, this quick aspect of the news is one of the major difference with the 60s, which are dear to us, where indeed we could plan and think about long periods. It's difficult to plan a long time during energy crisis. With our colleagues, we tried to do it in terms of electrification plan. It interested everybody for 48 hours, and then let's move on. So first element of worry, so how can we deal with daily crisis, and how can we anyway, even if there is no long time, at least to have medium time. So how can we talk about AI and impact on the labor and if we don't have 10, 15 years reflection, and other countries are doing it. And the political class is what it is. That is, all the elites, economic, political, intellectual, media, should, of course, deal with it. Second thing that you said, the disconnection between internal political life and global geopolitics. Safety geopolitics, Ukraine, we should pay attention to what goes on there in the coming weeks. It's not linear with all the brutality that can come up. Middle East, where clearly it's not solved, 40 boats per day through Hormuz. It was 10 during the war. We're far from the usual maritime traffic. Lebanon, and of course, the challenging of major architectures. NATO summit soon. We don't want to create any diplomatic incident, but the very future of the functioning of the Atlantic Alliance is raised. Clearly there is, there are commercial practices, quite a bit original. So if we deal with the national and then deal with the international, well, without having the ability to do go and fro, it's the difference with the 60s. Because what founded the reconstruction policies, well, it was true in the Fourth Republic, and the forces of right and left on the Fourth Republic, they would go between the daily crisis, China, Algeria, wars, and also long-term projection. It's difficult to do it now. So when we do it, people are polite, but everybody is pissed off. Let's face it. Third thing, and this is what worries me most, and I do it on purpose because we'll see what happens next fall. What strikes me, and I say it in front of my colleagues and ministers, how in 9 years could we, regardless of, I'm not talking about politics, how could we see economic results, touch labor law, touch what we call, of supply policy, have, a restart policy, drop the tax, and the MEDEF chairman laughs. And how have we been able to be beaten on the cultural frame? Last fall, what we call the production tool appeared for most of the political elites as being purely a fiscal service. Everything we've done, of understanding of to have economic culture with the imperfection from okay, but how come that in a few months after the dissolution, in fact, the relationship to economy, to the business, to companies were corporate business was reversed, and it's a difficult time for us because too much, because Patrick Martin and his managers, went to see those to whom they believed, to whom we went to fight for the offer policy, competitiveness, and so on. How come they can't do it anymore? Well, we didn't do it so completely because we were in minority. And in a democracy, when you start living ground at the cultural and political level, well, by definition, you have to accept to be a minority. And in the way we function, we were not fully, otherwise you would have had the Zugman tax, you would have had the challenging of the neutral tax. But it's not just a technical aspect in the parliament. And the rendezvous of next year, this is where the economic rencontre d'Aix-en-Provence, well, all the elites of the country, and not just political, accept to, walk around and explain why, in fact, we have to do these things differently in a complicated world. And this cultural battle, I'll take my share. I've been defensive for, my nomination and all the mess that followed. We were defensive, which means that now we have to be more offensive. And as you said, humble people and try to, in good faith, to explain that, we cannot do just about anything with our production tool. Otherwise, if we do anything with our production tool, we do anything with our growth. If we do with our growth, in fine, eventually we'll do anything with social protection, with the financing of public services, and our ability to redistribute richness, which was obvious, is no longer the case. And we played defensive, and and even we invoked, Georges Pompidou each time, the milk, the cow, don't touch the cow. We can always talk about the milk. But come on, this was not easy. Anyway, things should bring us to hope. Well, from my experience, one, and I'm saying it because I want you to be all convinced, and I say it on purpose, even with the controversy of the week, we are in a country where the state is holding. We are in a country where the state, there are civil servants and army people who do the job. I was with the firefighters in Marseille, the prefectural Météo France, we live in a state which functions, and I won't have the diplomatic incident. If we compare to ourselves with some powers around us, we have a state that functions. The paradox is that our state functions when the sea is rough, it functions well in crisis, and it becomes especially rigid when the sea is calm. And this is what we have to change. It's not challenging our capabilities to crisis. First element. It seems to me that should make us hope. So, state, pandemics, the states, war, the states, energy policies, partly, not all, states. So anyway, we go back to a report to the states. But my first reasons to hope is that the state is holding in a country where the state preceded the nation. Very few big countries where everybody wants local freedom, but everybody has a relation to the states, which is quite specific. Second reason why I'm optimistic is that we are still resisting in a certain number of supports, strong points. Okay, well, you don't talk about the weak points, but French disease, depreciate yourselves all the time and to do auto bashing. We'll have it will be more difficult to overcome, let's look at the situation, which are the objective points where we are able to look at the future. Energy, we cannot say that this spring, didn't take place in France or in Germany. Again, thank you, the Mesmer military and civilian heritage of the 60s, 70s. But what is true about the nuclear, it's true about the renewable. Likewise for defense, because if you put €1 of public defense in the army, there is also a push on the civilian aspect. This is our story. That was damaged in this 2000. But anyway, the spectacular remontada, we are able to have a serious point, and there are domains, and like some people say, we didn't fail. We didn't fail. Housing, we almost failed. Farming, agriculture, but we have to be mobile. It's not an easy domain. And of course, other domains, I won't take them all, but and including the SMEs and innovation networks, where we are present in. Third thing is that, in fact, in this country, and including in the parliament, from the most to the right to the most to the left, everybody has a relationship to sovereignty and to the autonomy of the country, which is almost a consensus or compromise. But this is a Gaulo-Mitterrandian story again. Nobody in the political class would, and the former prominent Antonio say, there are differences we may have between countries, in relationship with Washington, but nobody in the French political class will come in front of you by saying, it doesn't matter to depend a bit on Washington. It doesn't matter if we depend on Moscow. Some people did it, but they don't say it anymore. It doesn't matter if we depend on Beijing. Nobody will say that, because political heritage is specific, which in fact digs, it is the humiliation of 1940. It's nothing else. This explains all the major decisions after the war, including at the beginning of the Fifth Republic. So all this, stop here now, I will talk about the rest, but this we can do something with it, because it's a foundation in the history of the country and the Republic, which makes it to build something, and which could, made it possible for us to build a compromise in the Parliament. And because there is anyway somewhere something that comes up, and in which we don't want to do just about anything with the freedom of the French people and its autonomy. So this being said, the best is yet to come, as you know. We'll have to get the French on board. If I accepted this discussion, is that because between our Nobel Prize, his vision, his ability to see transverse views and to think and ponder, as any professor in the Collège de France who do research work, between Éric, who is not as angry tonight as he was last fall, well, okay. At one stage, we have to say, well, because it's a democracy, well, we will not decide that there will be progress if the population follows. There will be progress if we onboard the French people. There is no injunction to progress. And by saying this, I'll be careful, because it's kind of a criticism, for the last 9 years. Enrich yourselves, injection, be modern, and no. The construction of progress through the development of economic development, by the reconquest of the production tool, by the ability to interconnect to a global economy, which is more difficult, which is brutal dynamics, well, it will, of course, go through persuasion work, and I don't want to say it again, but, a bit. Even a Gaullist with only one television channel, and with the, with everything we know in this period, well, even they went for the approval of the French president, and the French people. So, and there is no pattern where we can ignore the French people. So how we do that? Well, we cannot do it by being too slow or has been. So what could be the problem of public authority. And the question of AI is quite interesting, and even so we can see that, as you know better than me, we know this and economy companies that will, anyway, if you don't do it, when you don't do it, people have their phone in their pocket and they use their personal AI to do the job. So the state, we have a challenge before the presidential election. Now we have to catch up rapidly, brutal, and it is huge. I said it, but I say it again. I do. We cannot be at a time where we will keep asking public expenditures and open ETPs, full-time equivalent for civil servants, where at a time where we are digitalizing, dematerializing most of the potential activities. Well, legality control in prefectures to know what local authorities do, justice. Clearly, that one of the response to what happened, in the last few weeks, is pulling out of the digital pre-story, to send a paper document from one court of justice to another one. Emails do exist, but de facto we can see that we will not be credible vis-à-vis the French people if the public authority doesn't show the example. And I have to speed up because I'm going to be shouted. I got plenty of things to say, but anyway, this, I think it's a major topic. It cannot wait, So I think you will have representative of unions who will come in the next 3 days. Clear 2 days. Well, the social dialogue has to start on the issue of AI and the impact on the labor law. And it cannot wait for the presidential election. A certain number of proposals should be present to so we can take it and organize the political discussions. Then we do nothing without patriotism. This is the yellow of the egg in the mayonnaise. So whether you like it or not, this Zuckman case revealed that there was a deep feeling in the country. You like it or not, that's not the topic, but there was a deep feeling of inequalities in the distribution of wealth. And this is we have to understand it, deal with it by just pushing it aside, by saying, okay, we moved one step, that doesn't work. And this again, we don't reinvent the powder. Clearly, citizens want to be part of it. So this is the question of savings. The end of discussion was, of course, except we've done things already. But we've opened on several things. It is clear that we have to change the entire economy. We have, private, I'm thinking about my defense issue. We need capitals, in a country where we think on terms of public or common. No, we have to move on. And likewise for maybe high fortunes. I heard a Nobel Prize winner, Economy Prize winner on France Inter this week, who put the idea on the table, saying, yeah, well, on the transmission of capital, isn't there something to be done? But win-win, to put money in sovereign funds. I say, okay, let's do it, but let's do it now, do it for the end of the year, for budgetary discussion, because next year we still have 6 billion euros to be found in public accounts for the defense, in addition to the 6 billion this year. And let me tell you that, by the way, if we had not done that, we would not have the army we have today, but we would not have the deficit we have today. 5.1 deficit, if we take the military budget of 2017, would be 4.4, So anyway, the question of mobilization of money waiters, but not through stupid fiscality, but through a bit of gaullism, in the way we deal with the topic. It is patriotism is an antidote to the virus coming in the country, which is raising us one against another. So, but anyway, and I would like to advance. And finally, Jean Hervé is screaming. We have to look, the public expenditures, and okay, what do you mean? Well, don't repeat the mistakes of the past. Well, and the energy crisis 2021-22, that cost us 72 billion euros. I did it. So, well, we didn't do the same thing, okay, last spring. But anyway, but we can't say that we've been supported, so anyway, I think that, not to reproduce the same mistakes, was something one means to deal with the problem, And the second thing is that we have to be brave, talk about the real topics. Maybe the presidential campaign will talk about pension, retirement, other topics. Healthcare, the problem of work, sick leaves, but we can see that clearly more 5.6 billion euros of public expenditures on sick leave since 2019. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. It's cost us more than the suspension of the reform of the pension. So anyway, those are spectacular discussions, So and at the same time, less spectacular discussions are key anyway to correct the accounts. I'm saying that because we'll have to deal with that, and again, that cannot wait, the presidential election, because we won't be able to loop a copy for next year if we don't deal with that. And finally, and clearly to my conclusion, we have to be able not only to channel the fiscal policy, but this is what we did, and we will do it. We don't want to challenge investment tools and production tools. So, again, political class has to hear it, and therefore those who are involved in this rencontre d'ex should convey this message as well. It's not just for political family, but you have to be able to rethink the relationship between public authorities, fiscal administration, yourself and businesses. And this is, we won't wait, because I think the presumption of good faith, we did something, but the presumption of good faith, the fact that when you ask, when you ask for, well, there are things that we want to implement very rapidly, because at the time of economic, we have no majority in the parliament, we have no time, no money, so the situation is ideal. But we have at least one thing for us, it's the standards, and with the minister we can give a shock of confidence in the coming months. So those who want to invest, who want to take risk, to find this risk. Last point, Jean-Hervé. All this functions only if we are able to do two things in the coming days. First, don't make any mistake, and the absolute fault, and I'm saying this because some economic businesses, this is the idea is prevailing, the idea that there is no budget for 2027. This would be a present for the country. This is a fault, it's a lie, it's a major error. Presidential end of April, the beginning of May, possibly new elections, parliament election June. We're in position, will inject the production of a budget for the country in July. So these texts will start being debated in the parliament in August, which we published in end of September until mid-October. That is at a time when we will have to discuss the budget for 2028. So that is the budget 2027 will be applied at the end of the year 2027. So let me tell you that no shock, no crisis, no support to be asked. Brace for it, for a public deficit which will be about 6.5 points, if not more, percent of the GDP. All the valves will be open, and by definition we will have to correct the and you can imagine the margin of maneuver. There will be, of course, fiscal, and there will be, of course, difficult. So a compromised budget, and candidates who will say vote for me, we will correct in May, rather than going to the fault by putting the country in the ditch, and which will sacrifice the first year of the next president. Well, so I'm very serious here because we do our best, whether you like us or not, but trust me, we do our best. So, until a certain stage, but you know, people have to fight for general interest, and the members of parliament elected for that should fight for general interest and think first about the interest of the country. Thank you, good evening.
Je crois qu'on sort avec des lignes de force et des grands messages d'espoir. Dialogue social, patriotisme, nous sommes bons. Il faut qu'on tienne le budget parce que si on montre un sérieux budgétaire, on aura une voie en Europe pour pouvoir investir et faire des grands investissements dans l'avenir. Je crois qu'on va mobiliser l'épargne et les talents et l'énergie à bon marché que nous avons. Je suis ravi de ce message d'espoir que vous avez délivré tous les deux. Merci infiniment.